Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the City Commission workshop for the City of Deltona for Monday, August 9th, 2021 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Villa Vasquez. Present. Commissioner King. Here. Commissioner McCool. Here. Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bradford. Here. Mayor Hersberg.
Here. May we all please stand and pledge to the flag. Commissioner King, would you like to lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this evening we have two items on the agenda. Item A is a discussion and review on food truck review, and item B is a discussion regarding the $15 an hour wage. So we'll begin with food trucks. Mr. Paradise.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron Paradise, Plan and Development Services, for the record. Tonight we're here to talk about, as introduced, food trucks and itinerant merchants. This has been something that the city has been talking about for quite a long time. And kind of last year, this itinerant merchant activity has become more prevalent. And let me just be clear. I kind of use the term itinerant merchant as kind of a general 30,000-foot view of what we've seen out there. Temporary mobile merchants, including makeshift restaurants, retail sales out of the trunk of cars, fishmongering, and of course food truck operations. And we must realize that there will be other itinerant merchants as we move forward. Never underestimate the creativity of the capitalistic spirit. With that being said, this proliferation of itinerant activity is prompting the city to have a more thorough look at regulating itinerant merchant activity, especially food trucks. And there are some rules and guide rails a local government needs to be aware with regard to the regulation of itinerant activity, especially relating to food trucks. But I'd like to just state kind of a basic philosophy, kind of, what we're looking at on this is that food truck and other itinerant merchant activity can lead to more choice and sometimes, greater economic vitality by introducing new venues to a community. However, these uses do need to be appropriately managed and located. Currently, City Code, Article 6, Chapter 22, known as the street vendors section, are the regulations the city uses to manage street vendor and food truck activity. Just kind of an overview. The rules are not very extensive. And basically, a food truck or itinerant merchant needs to be located within a commercially zoned property that is actively used for commercial uses. It cannot be located on a vacant commercial lot. It cannot be located on a commercial use that is defunct, just an empty shell of a building there. The city also allows food sales on house of worship properties. When this provision was put in 2014, there was a $20 fee required. Also, no food truck or vending activity is allowed within a public right-of-way. During the 2020 legislative session, the state reduced local control with regard to food truck regulation. Basically, a local government cannot prohibit food trucks within its jurisdiction. However, a local government can regulate when and where food trucks can be located. In light of recent changes to state law and with the intent of regulating food truck and other itinerant merchant activity, city staff is looking at upgrading Chapter 22, Section 6, street vendors. We've come up with a very rough draft. It's not ready for prime time yet, just to foreshadow future events, taking input we get from this meeting tonight. We'll go back and finalize a draft on Chapter 22 that deals with itinerant merchants, street vendors, food trucks, so that we can move forward. And with that being said, some of the changes that we're proposing include defining mobile food dispensing vehicles. This is plucked from state law, and this is a fancy term for food truck. It does require a food truck to have a Department of Business and Professional Regulation vendor license. However, the city will not require a business tax
Madam Mayor?
receipt.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Ron, I'm sorry.
Yeah, keep going, because I got these, everybody, we just need to stop for a minute, because everybody is grabbing everything to start searching for this, because we have nothing.
We have nothing.
We have nothing.
Right, and then-
We don't have a copy of the current,
This is just an overview of what we've been talking
but we
about.
have no backup material here whatsoever, and I'm getting this from both sides, and Dana has gone and got, Commissioner McCool's got, right, you went and got something. So we have nothing to look at. We don't have our old ordinance here unless we start scrolling and trying to look for it. We don't have anything here, and I think is that the frustration, commissioners?
Very. We don't have the current, we don't have the legislative text, which it says we have an attachment, but we don't have an
Have nothing.
attachment. So what discussion can we have without having information presented to us to actually have a conversation up here that even makes sense?
And I apologize for not having all the information included. The situation, we're kind of just looking for some dialogue and some, direction on which way to go on this.
Can I just pause this for a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Can we move to item number 2, the $15 an hour minimum wage, while some member prints out the current ordinance that we have, so that we have something to look at? Are we good with that, commissioners? And the draft, or
We
if
can
you
do
don't,
that.
if you don't,
Yes, ma'am.
and just so that we have something and a copy of what the legislature has presented to us.
Yes, ma'am.
Because otherwise,
that.
we're going to be back here doing this whole thing again.
Okie dokie.
So can we table this part until we get done with option B and go on to the $15 an hour? Commissioners, is there a consensus for that? Or would you rather stick with the food trucks as is?
Well, I don't see how we can even, how are we even going to go over this information that's being presented to us right now without having adequate time if we have questions and what's there to review it?
I mean, at least if we have a discussion with the things in front of us,
mean,
it
'cause-
helps for us to look at.
And I would say yes, as long as we have something, or even the draft, so that we can see where they're heading, and then we can have conversation in reference to a draft. But to have nothing, it just doesn't help.
I mean, because everybody up here is on their tablets, we're looking stuff up. And we're not, like, I feel bad because I'm paying attention, I'm hearing you, but,
Understood.
so can we do that?
Yes.
Okay, let's table this and move to item B, please, $15 an hour minimum wage. Or wage, whatever. Vice Mayor, can you remove yourself unless you want to talk on this? Thank you.
Yeah, I do want to bring up, we were also just given this $15 minimum wage packet, which I don't want to sound like the same thing again, but receiving this information on the dais to me is unacceptable. We need to have this information prior to the meeting, to look it up, to review it, so that if we have questions, we can adequately write these questions down to present them. So receiving something on the dais to me is totally unacceptable.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break, or do you want to go to the $15 an hour, Mr. Peters?
Yes, ma'am, I will. You all have received what I call the thin version and the thick version. The thick version is the rank and file employees, and the thin version has to do with the fire department under the collective bargaining agreement. I would like to go over the thick one first. I think it's simpler to understand. In the current budget, under personnel line item, we are finding ourselves with a bit of money left over because the first third of the year The previous administrator had a hiring freeze. In fact, we had a lot of vacant positions. That hiring freeze took a while to try to catch up. And in fact, in the areas of Deltona Water in the line operation, customer service operation, Parks and Recreation, those are the three primary areas, we have never caught up. We still have vacancies. We're finding that at the current level of pay, we are not able to attract enough people interested in positions. It kind of highlighted last week when I received a package for to hire somebody. They had a previous DUI, had a multiple probation violations, and things of that sort. I was not, and driving on a suspended license like 3 times. So I was not comfortable with that hire, obviously, but it just shows to highlight the fact that we actually consider somebody like that just to get one bodies in place. So during some recent discussion with other city managers, it had come to light that several cities are going to $15 an hour starting October 1, if they're not already there. I believe Daytona Beach is already at $15 an hour. DeLand is going to $15 an hour. I believe Orange City is planning to go to $15 an hour. So some of the cities that we have direct competition in hiring are going to $15 an hour. So I asked in the last week or two for our finance department to pull some numbers together. First of all was how much extra we have in the personnel line for this year. Then the analysis you see in front of you, which is what it would cost to go to $15 an hour in lieu of giving 3% pay raises that currently shown in the budget. And so if you take the thicker package, if you just turn to the last page, you will see that the cost of, in the middle of the page at the bottom is $1,358,000 to reach $15 an hour through the 3 different funds: general fund, stormwater fund, and Deltona Water. So that total is 1,368. The next number over 420,117 is what it would have cost to do a 3% pay raise as shown in the budget. So that means there is a difference of $938,723. We have enough money in the current personnel line items in all 3 of those funds to pay that amount. So my recommendation is that we go to $15 an hour starting on October 1, use the current year residual money in the personnel line item, and that way we don't impact the budget that has been presented to you all. You know, we need to be mindful that these employees we're talking about have been working with shorter staff under trying conditions and the like. We need to be able to start hiring people so we can give some relief. We also are looking at hiring some additional people in next year's budget. We need to put ourselves in a position to take care of that. Key thing I didn't point out is we are taking the lowest paid person to $15 an hour, and we're adjusting everyone else so that there is no compression throughout the budget. So everyone in the city will get an adjustment based on the $15 an hour, which is, in fact, if you go to the 3rd column, you will see what the difference is. These are all individual employees. Their names have been moved to protect the innocent. But you can see what kind of difference in pay each individual employee would see with $15 an hour versus the 3%. So it's a fairly significant amount of money. I think it's well deserved. It is an environment, we talked about this when Amazon came in. Amazon came in paying $15 an hour. We knew it was going to have an impact. Amazon is now over $15 an hour, and it continues to have an impact. So, I'm recommending that we do this effective October 1. We will transfer the fund balance from the personnel lines over the next year to pay for this increase. So that is the general fund, stormwater, and Deltona Water employees. The thinner package you have is the firefighters. Now, as you all know, as part of the compensation study, we have been negotiating with the firefighters as to a new base pay. We had offered $13.27. This was based on the average of the 13 cities that we compared them to. There was a disagreement with regard to whether it should have been $13.27 versus $13.47 or something like that number. If you took a straight average of the 13 cities, it would be $13.40 something at 95%. Because we use 95% of the average throughout the city because of some of the urban areas were much higher pay than us, and we found that 95% was about where it should be. The 1327 was arrived at because at least 3 of the comparing cities, namely Orlando, Apopka, and Gainesville, use different hours. We have something like 2,979, 97 hours, so they're guaranteed overtime. Orlando pays a higher amount, but they have fewer hours, so less guaranteed overtime. So Ms. Archer, when she did the analysis, she did a proration so that we were comparing apples to apples. And so when she did that, instead of being the straight average, it was a prorated average down to 1327. I met with the fire union president on Friday. I presented this information to him. He agreed to the 1327 in principle and the 15% as of October 1. The city attorney had been in communication with the union's attorney. They have 99% of the agreement done for an MOU to be considered by the union as a whole. And what that does is it spells out 1327. According to the collective bargaining agreement, it will be retroactive back to October 1 of 2020, and then the balance of the year. And if you look at the chart, and I apologize, there's a lot of columns here, but if you look at the column that had $3,378 at the bottom of the line, that is the adjustment that every firefighter would get for this current year using the 1327. Then on October 1, we would go to the $15 an hour in lieu of the adjustment that's in the collective bargaining agreement. Now, the $15 an hour adjustment would be the column that starts with 5,000, and then the column at the end with the 1,600 is the adjustment that would have been made according to the collective bargaining. So you will see that with $15 an hour, the firefighters are looking at approximately $3,700 additional pay next year as compared to what they would have gotten under the collective bargaining agreement. So the union is agreeable in principle. We will be bringing a MOU back to you once the union ratifies that memo of understanding. And so at that point, we will bring it back to you for final approval, and that's how we will proceed. We will do the retroactive pay based on 1327, and then on October 1, the lowest paid firefighter would be at $15 an hour, and everybody adjusted accordingly. So that's a very quick synopsis. The adjustment for the firefighters is, for the current year, would be 350, I've got to get my eyes right here, 357,000 for the adjustment for $15. No, this number doesn't look right.
547?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I thought it was a dollar sign. My contact's giving me a little bit of trouble.
547,711.
That is correct. In lieu of
Thank you.
the 168 out at the end that they would have gotten under collective bargaining. So the difference is about 300 and some thousand, which can be covered with the current salary lines. So we're recommending with the firefighter to do the $13.27 and then $15 an hour starting October 1 in lieu of the adjustments called out for in the collective bargaining agreement. So that's what I have. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Yes, Vice Mayor is on the board, and I just have a quick question. So you said that the 1327 is retroactive to last October.
Correct.
Start-
In accordance with the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay. And then instead of what was supposed to be the increase for next year, we're going to go to the $15 an hour.
That is correct.
And
ma'am.
do you have any idea what the increase, according to the collective bargaining agreement, would have been?
Yes, ma'am. That is the very last column, the total. And that would have been 168,000 some odd change.
Okay, so that's what it would have been?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's variable according to each individual employee, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Vice Mayor, did you have?
Yeah, that was actually part of what I was bringing up as well on the firefighters. We have about 31 people right now not making $15 an hour. 31 is what I counted here, right?
That's correct.
So, and maybe I missed it, the 3% here is in addition to what we already went through before and gave everybody a raise.
What will happen at $15 an hour, the difference between $13.27 and $15 is $1.73.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm on your thick packet now.
Pardon me?
I'm on the thick packet. The mayor asked the questions that I had on the firefighters.
Okay.
My biggest thing on the firefighters is I'm surely not going to give every staff member, park tech, and everybody else $15 an hour, and my firefighters aren't going to start, but she kind of addressed that. So on your thick pack, we have about 31 people currently that are not making at least $15 an hour.
And the
And-
firefighters?
No, regular.
Regular
Regular,
packet, your
okay.
thick packet. And I believe we had a really brief discussion on this when we were doing our wage increase, that, you know, the $15 an hour minimum wage is coming up, and do we want to start looking at this now? And I was under the understanding when the question was asked that was going to be looked at. Is there a way to bring the individuals that are, I mean, obviously $11.90, $12, you know, like I said, we have 31 people who aren't even at that $15 an hour price. And yes, I understand we have the money in 2021 budget, but we also have to look at 22, 23, 24. So we're talking money that's going to be in the budget year after year after year, not just, hey, we had a great year, we had a lot of layoffs, so we have a whole lot of extra money, and let's put it into something that's going to be annually coming back at us. And we have a lot of uncertainty right now. And this just seems like a lot. You mean, I want to bring individuals up to date. You know, I agree. In the workforce, people won't even walk through the door for $15 an hour right now. You know, and I'm just wondering, does it have to go all the way to the top, that extra 3%? Or is there some way we can do it at a gradual where we're not getting hit this hard? Is there any thoughts and plan B? Do we have a plan B to this?
But let me first of all correct the record here. There's significantly more people that don't make $15 an hour. You have the first page, and then you flip over a couple pages, you got the stormwater group with significant number under 15. Then you go to the last pages, that's Deltona Water, and there's a significant number of people in Deltona Water that don't make 15. So the total number is quite high. On the first page, you are correct, but when you go in and look at the Stormwater Division and the Deltona Water Division, you got a significantly larger number of people who currently are not making $15 an hour. The other thing that's important is the hiring problems is not just confined to the people under $15 an hour. We have positions that would pay $17 an hour that we're having trouble filling, and making the adjustment on the 15 and prorating it up through the organization make those other positions more viable to be filled also. So we have a systemic problem throughout. When we did the Archer study for the compensation, Rita Archer did an analysis on the $15 an hour because we recognized that first of all, within 2.5 years, we have to be at $15 an hour by law. But in the meantime, for instance, the plan is in another 2 to 3 years to be at $17 an hour minimum pay, because there's a recognition that salaries are going up significantly. We're having trouble getting people to come off of unemployment for various reasons, not the least of which they probably had figured out they can get paid under the table and not in a straight-up job and do better than making, $13 an hour in a regular job with benefits. A lot of these people that make these $13, $14, $15, they have to pay for their, if they have family, they have to pay for the family plan on health insurance. There's other costs. They have to pay 3% toward their retirement. Firefighters are paying almost 12% for retirement. Now that money starts to come off the top, and it has an impact. And so, people in other jobs that don't require payment toward health insurance or retirement, they feel like they're making more money because they're not required to pay these other benefits. So those are the things that we're looking at. I think part of the land analysis was to pay $17 an hour, help defray some of the costs for health insurance and retirement and that type of thing to be competitive, because the whole package is what people look at. I know for a fact that people come in, they look at the health insurance, they look at the fact they got to pay 3% before retirement, and they'll go, I'm really not making blank, I'm making less. So that's what we're dealing with.
Commissioner McCool?
Mr. Peters, how many municipal and firefighter employees do we have overall? I mean, I tried to count, but I'm sure there's... Do you know what that number is?
Chief, can you help me here?
In the operations division, there's 78 employees, and in the administration, there's 14.
How about municipal, public works, rec, how many is that?
Public Works is Public Works, Stormwater, Deltona Water, it's about 180 employees.
And I just want to say, do we have enough employees to run our city right now? Yes or no?
Ms. McCool, that's a question I really hate to ask, because obviously we're surviving, but long-term, no, we don't have the number of people we need.
No. My point in asking that was this is my feeling based on information gathered, is that the longer we go without filling these positions, without paying employees what they should have, a living wage,
that we're going to fall further behind. We might have the money to do capital improvement, but we're not going to have the labor to do it. And we're going to continue to kick the can down the road and play catch up, and things are just going to get more expensive. That's my assessment of the situation.
And I will add, imagine every single one of you on the dais have heard people say it takes them 45 minutes to an hour to reach customer service in Deltona Water. That's in large part because we have vacancies. And similarly in customer service here in City Hall, we are short of people. Those are the people that the public interacts with. As far as I'm concerned, they're some of the most important people we have in the city, because when you call to interact with your government and there's nobody there to help you, that's when they get frustrated. That's when they start calling you all. And so from that standpoint, being short of staff has a direct impact, not just on the city, but on the commissioners yourselves and the complaints you receive.
And that is my point exactly, is that the optics, not only is it just bad in general, the optics are bad, right? And then people get frustrated and say, oh, I'm paying taxes, and then this is the crappy service I get, but this is the reality of the situation. I have had in the last couple of months 2 people that are employed by the city say, I like my job, but I can't afford to stay in my job. And if we have that exodus of good people, we need to keep good people in here in the city, and we need to pay our people a decent wage. And there's $15 an hour. I mean, think about it, So last thing is, is this where we need to be? Is this an assessment? How many positions do we need to fill? A, I just want that number. And 2, how quickly can we fill these positions, right, and get people so that we're running, the city is running like this. We're getting projects done. We're getting people paid. What is that outlook?
Difficult question to answer. I will just share with you, in Deltona Water Utility Line Division, the position that paid under $15 an hour, we had 2 applicants that we set up interviews for. Neither one showed up. We can only assume why. But that's a problem that we're continually having if we set up interviews for the vacant positions and nobody shows up. I can tell you that we have been making adjustments. Instead of paying somebody $13.50 an hour, we have adjusted it up to $14 and change just to get the people to take the jobs. That creates some internal strife because we have people that may have been here for a while making the 14, and they're questioning, well, gee, I've been here a year or 2 years, and you're bringing a person brand new in making the same thing. So, we have those conversations. If we get to $15 an hour, can I guarantee that we're going to fill all these positions in quick order? No. But it certainly will enhance our opportunities as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for that. And I just want to, $15 an hour, barely a livable wage. I'm not going to hold you to this, but I just want a guesstimate. What is that number where we're attractive? I mean, where we're at and, where we should be. What is that number? What is that attractive number where we're getting quality people? What is, per hour? What does that look like?
I can tell you, based on what I've been observing, $17 to $18 an hour seems to be the magic number. We seem, in the positions we have, making 17, 18, we tend to get more applicants. Unfortunately, they're few and far between. But that seems to be a number that draws people's attention. Obviously, I cannot come here and suggest we go to 17 right now. We don't have the money for that. But over time, we're going to need to prepare for that because I fully expect in another 2 years to 3 years, if that's going to be the number that we need to be at is 17 in order to be able to compete.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Peter, I think this is great. I think it's been overdue for our staff to get a decent salary. This is, I don't even think this is a surviving salary for a family of four, anywhere, not only in Deltona, but anywhere here in Florida. Across the board, I'm talking for both. So $15 an hour to start is a good number. We have people that go across the bridge for that amount of money, even considering that they still have to pay gas and transportation. They still go because they make that much and they probably get more benefits. We approve businesses to open up in Deltona that take our staff because they're getting paid more money, or at least a decent salary because they still live here in Deltona. So I think this is an awesome thing to bring to the city of Deltona, to bring all our staff up to $15 an hour. And if I had to make a motion to approve it today, I would, if it had to come to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So in all the years I've been up here, especially for Deltona Water, Public Works, it's been the same thing. People come here, they get their training for a year, they get their certification, and bye-bye for $1 more an hour, 50 cents more an hour. Over the bridge they go. Bye-bye to another city. It's been systemic, like you said, sir, for as long as I've been here. It's about time it's corrected. And the reality is, I was speaking with someone that works in another city, and in Volusia County, and we were talking about wages and where they are. They're all small city, also going up to the $15 an hour. We were talking about getting people in the permitting department. And the individual asked me, like, what are we paying per hour for permitting? What is it, $13, $14 an hour, something like that, right, for permitting? She said, oh, no. You're never going to get anybody of any value that even knows how to do the job for that amount. We're looking at $16 an hour to even get people, exactly to your point. And this is a city that is the exact opposite of us. Exact. Smaller population, less staff, totally different demographic, other side of the county, and they have the same issue. And we have to fund this. And I'm glad to see that you addressed compression, because the other big problem is you demoralize your staff if you don't make it right for those people that are at that level or a few dollars above it. You have to handle that. And as you said, sir, we have the money right now. We have to implement it. And when we look at, that's what a budget's all about. Next year, when we look at what we're going to be paying in wages and salaries, we have to adjust other things for that. That has to be there, because right now the biggest complaint I get, and I don't know who said it, Mr. Peters, Commissioner McCool, nobody's picking up. Nobody's picking up. Called again, went to voicemail, nobody's returning my call, over and over and over again. It's not only Deltona Water, I get bigger issues down here. And we have such a short staff down here. And I know of another city that was advertising for one position. They got 100 applicants, didn't hire one of them. Not a high-end position either, middle of the road. Code, that kind of level, pay-wise. 100 applications, none qualified. So we have to do something. So, Vice Mayor?
Okay, I'm not saying I don't want to do and bring people up to 15 an hour. What I'm trying to do is come up with a game plan so those individuals can be brought up to scale. And I understand compression, but we just had and spent a lot of money to have this whole analysis done. What I'm not seeing on here is the range of the people and where we're at. Like, I think we've had one individual, again, it's just lack of not having enough time to go over accurate information and having a lot of questions and doubts in your brain. Where I see one that says over max pay grade. Okay, so where are the others in reference to that pay grade that we spent so much time going over and working with that company and saying, okay, so we have, obviously, we know pay grades 2, 4, 6. A lot of these pay grades, they definitely need to come up in order to be where you need to be to hire these people. When you start getting up to pay grade 39, 33, 34, 37, 38, 39, those aren't like, oh my gosh, right now we got to hire and raise these people up. Where, I guess my question is, we're not being told where everybody else is in range. And I don't know, you may have that information, and maybe everybody else remembers it and I don't, but we spent a lot of time going over that whole pay structure and what to give people raises and to bring them up and to bring them current, and we had that pay scale and the pay grade. So what's difficult with this is, we're just saying everybody is going to get that 3%. So what you're saying is, I'm just trying to eliminate it so it's not as hard as the first year. Is there a way, once we get to these other pay grades, to hit this compression and to bring it up? I know you have it this year. I'm worried about next year and the year after. And if you're telling me, yep, no problem, I can guarantee, I have no problem with it, but I can't see where we're at.
Madam Vice Mayor, the Archer study, while it was a good study, it is not the level that I would have preferred. You need to realize it predated me. The Archer study looked at a defined number of positions. They took all the positions in the city and they categorized them together based on a questionnaire. So, for instance, I'll give you a for instance. We had a GIS position open. We lost a very good GIS technician to the school system. They were paying significantly more than we were. I couldn't afford to make that adjustment. We went back and looked at where that position was categorized compared to other people in the city. While, based on questionnaires and all, you can understand why Ms. Archer put them where they were. But the reality is, a technical position like a GIS tech that usually also is an AutoCAD tech in most companies pays much higher. So we had to go back and evaluate that position, make some internal adjustments to the pay scale. We were fortunate to hire somebody with some experience. The irony is, if we had done that prior to, as part of the study, we may now have lost the person we did. So what we're finding as we go through this is there are positions throughout the city that were put in, let's say, pay grade 33. But then when you start comparing each of the pay grade 33s, and I'm going to give you a prime example, one of them that really jumps out. If we have a public works manager and we have a stormwater manager, the stormwater manager, I believe, supervises more people, but the public works manager supervises in other divisions, the fleet maintenance, sign shop, and public works techs. 3 divisions versus 1 division. The Archer study had the public works manager 2 pay grades above the stormwater manager. In reality, they're equal positions in terms of their responsibilities. So we had to make an adjustment. But we have been doing those things internally since the study was done to try to get in equity so we don't lose people who feel like that, they're in an unequitable situation. So, in my ideal world, every position would have been evaluated and compared, not just one position out of 6 or 7 and trying to formulate where they fit. The director positions, the range in the director positions, according to what they do, is pretty extreme. But that's not unusual when you compare to other places. HR directors, Parks and Rec directors in other municipalities tend to be some of the lowest paid position, directors level. And then conversely, public works director, fire chief, assistant city manager, they tend to be on the higher end of the spectrum. So, you know, when you look at this study, it's a wonderful study to a point, but is it what you really need to get a competitive range of pay throughout the board? No. You would literally have to compare every position. I have only seen one study that ever did that, and that was a good friend of mine that was HR director over in Mount Dora. He did an internal study. They looked at every single position in the city, and they even compared it to the private sector, which is another unique aspect. Now, we do compete with the private sector in a lot of our positions. Customer service rep, we lose them to the power company, the phone companies, the banks. They hire up our best people, paying them significantly more than we pay them. So we have never compared ourselves to the private sector. If you took our acting public works director, myself, when I was back in that position, and you compared it to the private sector, you're getting a bargain. What Steve Danskins and I can make in the private sector makes our position pale by comparison in terms of salary. But you're not going to pay your public works director more than the city manager, because that's what the market bears. So, you know, that's the reality of, you know, my positions and Steve's position when I was public works director. So salary surveys, unless you almost do it internally and do every job comparison, you're going to have some of the concerns you're expressing, Vice Mayor. I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying, but you would have to do a much more comprehensive salary study that most municipalities would never do. So.
It's just frustrating because we spent a lot of time on that Archer study, and, you know, to hear this one's right, but this one's not right, but yet I'm just going to give a, you know, raise. And I understand what you're saying. It is a lot of time, but, you know, so basically with the Archer study and what we just approved, I don't know how to put it without, I mean, there's just, it was just like, I feel like we were doomed, because now we're being told, oh, well, it was right, but it wasn't right. So some of these pre-grades, like you could say, hey, you know, your SW manager now you're saying is 25 grade and the other one's a 33, and they should have been the same. So does that mean down the line we're going to need to actually bring him up to the correct grade, or bring the other one down to the correct grade, and this one's off grade and that one's off grade? I guess I'm the only one frustrated.
Well, it's not that you're the only one frustrated, Vice Mayor. It's the fact of the matter that this salary study was the most comprehensive I've ever seen. The other ones never had they just had numbers all across the board that were done in the past, and they were never, ever identified with an actual position. It was just, you know, and numbers, as everyone knows, are very easily manipulated. And when the study was very good. However, when you were asked to describe your own position and what you do for that position on an honor system, for some people that works and other people it doesn't. But the reality is we've lost people to, like Mr. Peters said, to waste companies in customer service. We've lost people, this is something I don't hear anybody talking about, people doing their own business. We've lost people here that have gone and opened their own business. Whether it's a lawn business or a construction business or handyman business or something like that, there are people leaving in this environment when you can't get people to do work at your house or in your business, like tradespeople. If those people have a skill, they're starting their own business. And that's a whole nother competition. And the reality is when you hire someone, especially youth, they don't look at, oh gosh, they just see, I got to pay for health insurance. I got to pay for, you know, a pension. They don't see that's for their future. We're all blind when we're young and think, when am I going to use that? And what am I paying all that money in for what? And especially when you have the chance of opening your own business and all that's yours. Down the road, you may see that I don't have health insurance. That's a problem, because I work in that field where a lot of people don't have health insurance. And until you get sick, then you realize it's a problem. So when you deal with a municipality, not only do you have to work on a budget transparently, and you have to question every position, you also have to understand that you're dealing with a mentality where in this flush economy, people can go out and earn a lot more than $12, $13 an hour doing their own gig. So we're up against a lot of competition. Commissioner Sosa and then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
Yeah, quick question. What is our turnover rate for fiscal years 2021, 2020, 2019, and 2018? How much turnover do we have?
I can't give you a precise number, but I can tell you, for instance, in Deltona Water, we are having very significant turnover. We're losing people to Sanford, Seminole County. Just 18 months ago, our city engineer left to go to Seminole County making $10,000 a year more. The salary study did not result in enough of an adjustment that would have made a difference. Customer service, we're losing them. We're probably averaging 2 to 3 a year turnover.
Out of how many?
Pardon me?
When you say 2 to 3 a year?
Out of 12, roughly.
2 to 3 out of 12?
That's 20-25% turnover rate. Jeff Elder and utility lines is probably averaging 25 to 30% turnover. Those are the ones I know readily. I know the city clerk's office has had a couple, 2 or 3 turnovers just in the last year.
Those were part-time positions?
I understand, sir, but we've had turnover down in customer service in the building department. We've had a significant, probably 60% turnover this last year. Code and compliance officers, we probably are, let's see, there's 15, 20%. So we have significant turnover in a lot of areas of the city. I'm not as well versed on the Parks and Rec, but I know Parks and Rec has about 7 vacant positions right now. Stormwater has about 9 vacant positions. So, to have vacant positions means you've been having turnover. So it is pretty significant, and the mayor is correct. We got people who are leaving, as I alluded to earlier, who are leaving for private sector jobs that don't have benefits, but they get more money per hour. And when you're trying to rent or own property, the dollar value on your paycheck is what's important, because that's where you pay your bills. And if you're tight on paying your bills, your benefits are not as important. So, what you will find in a municipal government is typically the people at the lowest end of the pay scale, I don't want to say don't appreciate the benefits, but their financial situation, the benefit does not mean as much to them as the actual dollar amount. As you go higher in the pay scale, then the benefits become more important. Excuse me. So we have significant turnover. And like I said earlier, I cannot guarantee that $15 an hour is going to make it significantly better, but it's going to make it better, I can assure you, because I'm seeing all the paperwork coming through for hiring people, and I'm saying that we need to adjust people from 13-something to 14, 30, or whatever in order to get someone to take the job. In some cases, not that qualified, but that's what it's taking for us to get people to at least consider the job. So I'm pretty confident at $15 an hour, we will see an improvement in our staffing levels.
Okay. Is there any way we could get a percentage, an actual number of employees per department and what that turnover was? And also, I'd like to see how many of those positions were part-time that maybe left for full-time positions to kind of, keep it apples to apples. And also, I keep hearing they left for Sanford, they left for this place. Do we have any of those on exit interviews? Is that's just people, just saying that's on their exit interviews?
We have exit interviews we offer exit interviews for every employee that leaves the organization. Not all of them fill it out. But we review them. A significant number bring up the pay. Significant others have other issues. And so we review all the exit interviews to see what the problem is. For instance, the GIS coordinator that left, he had multiple issues, but number one on the list with the pay.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Avila Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. Just so that I have a better understanding of what we're discussing today, today's discussion is about agreeing on a $15 an hour starting pay, not on adjusting other salary on this list. Am I correct?
No, ma'am, not totally. We are adjusting, for instance, if the lowest paid position is $13 an hour, there'd be a $2 an hour adjustment, and we would do a $2 an hour adjustment all the way through the pay scale of all the employees. So everyone will be adjusted to avoid any level of compression. Similarly, in the fire department, the minimum pay is $13.27 based on this year's compensation study. So all the firefighters will get a $1.73 adjustment to go to $15 an hour. So even if you're making $30 an hour, as a firefighter, you would get a $1.73 adjustment to your pay.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, it's 6:30. We're 1 hour into this. Mr. Peters, what are you wanting from the commission? Is the discussion good for you? I know Commissioner Sosa asked for a few items for later on for clarification for all of us. Are you wanting a consensus? Will you, where are we with what you need from the commission?
The plan right now is if I get general consensus from you all, what we do is during the budget review process, whether it be the first meeting or the second meeting, we will ask you to roll over a sufficient amount of money from the current payroll lines, general fund, stormwater, and Deltona water, to cover the $15 an hour pay for next year. Because of all the vacancies that we've had this year, there's sufficient amount of money in the current year personnel line to pay for these adjustments, and that is our recommendation, which you all would need to do. We will not change the budget straight up. We will transfer the money into the budget for October 1 so that there's sufficient money to make this happen. And we will bring that back to the commission.
Okay, Commissioners, if you're clear with what Mr. Peters is saying, do we have consensus to have that brought forth during the first or second budget hearing? Yes, Commissioner McCool? Yes. Everyone, okay. Vice Mayor? Okay, so sir, you have your consensus to bring it forth during one of the two budget hearings of your choice.
And I will provide all of you all the information that Commissioner Sosa requested.
Yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much. Commissioner King?
I have a question, Mr. Peters. Once we do all of this, and everyone is making their $15 an hour, and everybody has been adjusted, in the coming years, we are looking at, what, a 3% increase Or does everybody, what is the cap on the pay for different groups of people? Whether it's a park tech or, you know, an HR clerk, what is, does each job have a cap on pay?
The way the spreadsheets are spelled out is everyone will get the adjustment for the $15 an hour adjustment in lieu of the 3% pay raise that's in the budget.
Okay.
And similarly, in the fire department, they would get the adjustment for $15 an hour in lieu of the pay raise formula that's in the collective bargaining agreement. So, you know, while you may see a number like $1 million to go to $15 an hour, that's offset by $300 and some thousand for a 3% pay raise. So the net difference would be $700. Those are just numbers. I'm not reading them.
Right.
But you know, the cost of the $15 hour adjustment is offset by what was already in the budget for a 3% pay raise. So the delta is all we have to come up with out of this year's budget.
Okay. My question is, what about next year and the year after that and the year after that? Are we looking at a 3% increase for our employees? And if we are, at what point does each job top out? For instance, I go to work for the power company. I start out as a helper, and I make $7.89 an hour. And I leave that job, I bid another job, and I become a repairman B. And as a repairman B, I'm making $11 an hour. That's my bottom pay. That's where I start. I leave that job and I go to be an apprentice lineman, and I'm making $16 an hour. As a lineman now, I make $17 or $18 an hour, but in that category, lineman, I am only going to make so much money. What is the top pay that I can make in these categories here? As a lineman, I top out at $36.24. What do these top out at any point, or do they continually increase by 3% every year?
Okay. In the Archer study, one of the advantages of doing a comprehensive study like this is this piece of paper is the salary range. And somebody is at here. And every year they go up to 3% until they reach the max. And then next time you do a salary survey, they look at this and they adjust it. Because obviously the pay range for a firefighter has changed over that 4 or 5 years. So we adjust the pay scale under them, so now they're not at the top anymore and they have room to grow again. Then you do another salary survey and it moves a little bit. So we do have people that are topped out right now, even under the new salary study. Typically, everywhere I've worked, if you are maxed out and you have a 3% raise, you get your 3% raise in a lump sum check. That way your retirement doesn't go up. None of those type things go up. You get that one-time check and your salary stays the same. And so until that pay scale moves under you, you don't move. And typically those pay scales are adjusted most places every 3 to 5 years. So if you're up near the top, you know, the best you can hope for would be a 3% bonus. Now, going back to the 3% number, that's based on the economy. If the economy does poorly, the cost of living adjustment, I think this year we're technically 1.8%. Some of us find that hard to believe. But the 3% is a number that we have always used. And part of the reason I think we have used that number is to save our homes is based on 3%. The ideal growth rate for a government economy is 3% growth. There's certain states that I'm aware of where they have grown literally 3% every year, and up until 2008 had never had a recession. 2008 was different. It bottomed out for everybody. But there's a lot of studies that have been done that if you can grow your government level economy by 3%, you can sustain that over time. If when we have those 15, 20% spikes, and like California does, where it goes up 15, 20%, and then it drops 30, and then it goes back up 15%, and it's just a yo-yo, and you're trying to do an average in there. But that's where I think the 3% that we always use comes from. But it's also generally the pay steps in a pay plan are usually 2.5%, 3%, or 5%. But when it comes to next year's budget, we will look at what the cost of living is. We will look at what makes it competitive, and we will recommend an increase based on those 3 factors. I know it's a long-winded answer to your question, but it's a difficult question also.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Real quick, when you're bringing this before us, I'd also like to see where this 3% is going to put the individuals on the study, where we're at with them, because I still have a problem with giving anybody who's at that top of that salary range or over that salary range an additional 3%. This isn't made to give across the board 3% raise. This is made to bring our individuals on the lower scales up to $15 an hour. And I understand compression, but if they're already at the top, I don't see why, if you're already at the top, why they should have a 15%. So I just like to see those numbers as well.
If you're at the top, you will not get an adjustment.
I'm sorry?
If you are at the top of the pay scale, this adjustment will not give you any more money. You are topped out.
Right, so what you're saying, so they're not going to get it
Yes,
if they're
ma'am.
at the top on that scale. That's why I was asking earlier, is it totally across the board, or where's it coming into the study that we just went through? So if you're saying, hey, you're at the top, I'm not adjusting you, then I'm okay with that, but that's not how I was understanding it.
Using my example before, this is the pay scale. If you are here, you get no adjustment. I believe there's a couple lines in here where they say they are topped out and they don't show any adjustment.
Yeah, there's like 1 or 2. That's why I was asking earlier that I seen there was only like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But that's why I was like,
No, ma'am.
don't feel comfortable giving those that are like up and above more.
No, ma'am, if you're topped out, you're topped out.
Thank you. That makes me feel better.
Okay, so let's move on to, if everyone is done here, I don't see anyone else who's on the board. Commissioner Sosa?
From the Archer study, when we went ahead and decided to give everybody a bump in pay and we retroed it back to October 2020, has that been done already?
Can you ask that again?
With the Archer study, and we all decided that we needed to bring everybody up at least to the minimum levels of pay, the minimum standard, and then there were some of the staff that had been here for numerous years that weren't at the midpoint. Did we go ahead and already increase those salaries, and did we retro that back to, I believe it was October of 2020? Has that been done yet?
What we did is anybody that were below the midpoint was considered to be 7 years. So if you had been here 5 years, we would take the difference between the min and the midpoint, let's say with $3,000. Well, let's make it $2,800, make my math easy. We would divide 2,800 by 7. So it'd be $400 a year, multiplied by 5, and you would get $2,000 above the minimum. So we adjusted everybody from the base to the midpoint in order to avoid that lower level compression. So those were the only ones that we made those adjustments to. We did not adjust people over the midpoint.
And that's been done? We've already cut those folks a check?
Yes, it's already been implemented,
It's already
right?
been implemented? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing as how no one is on the board anymore, we'll move back to item A, discussion and review on the food trucks and itinerant merchants.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron Paradise, you have been provided a copy of the very rough draft for the ordinance that proposes to change Chapter 22, street vendors. And if you go to page 2 of the ordinance, and it starts with a definition of mobile food dispensing vehicles. And again, this is just kind of a fancy definition for a food truck. And the definition mentions that there will be required for a license from Department of Business and Professional Regulation, and indicates that the vehicles are stationary more than 10 minutes at one place, and does not include roving vehicles like the ice cream truck. And I'm on page 3 now, by the way. And moving down to proposed section 22-191, and keep in mind the nomenclature on this draft ordinance is a work in progress. It's going to need a lot of updating and cleaning up. But basically what we're looking for is for these food trucks to provide a copy of the following documents to the Planning and Development Services Department, which would include the Department of Business and Professional Regulation licensing, a completed fire safety inspection report performed by the fire department within Volusia County. It could be Deltona's fire department, it could be Volusia County's fire department. And the intent is hopefully they would have a placard or paperwork handy that if somebody came up and said, hey, look, have you been inspected? Yes, we've been inspected. With regard to the location of these food trucks and itinerant merchants on private property, the intent is they would need to produce a notarized authorization of owner issuing permission for them to be at this location. Also talk about fines and infractions and enforcement. I'll talk a little bit about that later. We're also concerned about how these food trucks could impact the function and circulation of traffic with regard to parking and ingress and egress to these commercial facilities. Some of these commercial facilities out there in the city were built in the 80s, and they are underparked to this day. And bringing in a food truck and more activity certainly makes that situation worse. So what the city is requiring is a professionally prepared site plan be submitted to the Planning and Development's office for review to ensure that the food truck is not going to reduce the parking required to support the permitted principal use on the property, nor is the location of these food trucks going to create safety issues with pedestrians or drive aisle function of the commercial areas. We're saying that food trucks will be able to operate on property developed with an existing active commercial use, C1, C2, and C3 zoned properties. Vacant lots or non-functioning commercial uses will not be eligible. Food trucks may be allowed in business plan unit developments or industrial plan unit developments if food trucks are part of the PUD development agreement. Also, you'll notice that there's some chicken scratch there, it's mine, and the intent is to look at bringing the house of worship as a potential allowance under this section, but they would have to comply with all the other requirements. Food trucks must be located on a paved surface outside of a right-of-way. They can't be obstruct a driveway throat or a cross-access area or drive aisle. Let's talk about fire safety requirements. Food trucks basically have to be separated 10 feet from all buildings, 10 feet from all other vehicles, and 10 feet from combustible materials like trees or grass or something like that. Access to fire lanes and access to fire prevention devices shall be maintained, like fire hydrants, for example. Also, there's some regulations about the LP gas and the generators that are sometimes associated with these food trucks, and they just need to be consistent with the fire prevention code. All this is ferreted out, or a lot of it's ferreted out, in the site plan and the inspection that's part of this proposal. The food trucks shall not be associated with any unsafe or hazardous materials, shall not cause noise, vibration, etc. The duration of hours is limited from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And we're looking for no more than one food truck on a property that is 5 acres in size or smaller, and no more than 2 food trucks on properties that are 5 acres, or excuse me, greater than 5 acres. Just to give you some perspective, the Save-A-Lot Shopping Center down at the corner of Howland and Portland is 6.5 acres. The Lowe's facility under that unified ownership is about 11 acres. Publix next door is about 10 acres. The residual part where Beef O'Brady's is parceled out as about 5.5 acres. Just kind of provides some perspective there. There's information about temporary signs. No temporary signs in the right-of-way. The city is receptive to there being food trucks and to ensure that the city's requirements with regard to these inspections and site plans and so forth are not shutting people out of the food truck market. City is proposing that it sponsor food truck bazaars or events here at City Hall. We're talking about a pilot program here for Wednesday and Saturday timeframes here later on this month. And again, we're looking for some consensus that we're going in the right direction on this and to continue to move forward with these themes to advance an ordinance change to the City Commission. I'll be happy to field any questions you all have with regard to this topic.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor, then Commissioner McCool, and then Commissioner Avila Vasquez.
I have a couple concerns. One, I want to talk about the signs. We have a few trucks on Howland, and what is very distracting, and they pop up every once in a while, sign waving, standing on the sidewalk, doing their sign flipping, waving people down. To me, that's a distraction and quite possibly an accident. So individuals will take advantage of it by saying you're allowed to have signs. I mean, I think even at the Publix there, a few times there was nice, large flags out there, and they even parked on the sidewalk. And, I get we have it covered, not in the parking or the right-of-way. People are always going to find their way around it, and they're going to find any little loophole in the sign. And I know it's difficult because, Marcia, when you worked on that sign ordinance, it was like, hey, we can't discriminate between this sign and this sign and this sign and this sign, but I would like to see added in here, I don't think there should be sign flippers. I don't think they should be allowed to be out there waving people down. I think it's just asking for an accident at that point, and then we're going to have our wonderful departments out there trying to rescue somebody. That's one. Two, I think when it came up the last time, and I think it's covered now, I was just looking over legislation. I understand we can't tell them they can't. You know, our own local businesses and the few restaurants we had when it came up before, you know, voiced concern of the hoops they have to go through to get their licenses and to stay maintained and to stay within health department guidelines and that. And then here we allowed these. You know, another, for instance, is I've passed a vehicle several times that goes on the road, throws a cooler in the back of his truck, and he's selling seafood from his trunk. You know, so these are those things that people are gonna find a way to get around. And yes, they're gonna do it until they're caught, but how long and how many people are gonna get sick? It just doesn't, you know. So those, I mean, I'm not against them. I love food trucks. I'm a food truck junkie. I think Commissioner McCool will contest to that. I mean, even at our last thing, I think I went there just and gobbled up as much as we could. But, you know, those were just the biggest thing that I could see that you know, the safety of the residents, driving, the safety in the parking lots. I mean, I don't know if we can say even, I mean, I don't know how to put it without sounding like a grandma. You know, a food truck in a parking lot in a corner where we don't have good lighting.
That's a site plan will take care of that if they're mandated to have a site plan.
We got to make sure, but if they're just pulling up,
Then
and they just have to have a permit. So does the permit going to say,
Can't
hey,
get a
you're allowed
permit.
to be from here to here? Or how does that work?
Hey, Ron, can I help?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The state is trying, you know, we're in this constant battle now with the state trying to preempt local government's ability to regulate their own, you know, place. So we were faced with, you know, basically we can't ask for a BTR, but we do still have our zoning regulations. So we basically have gone around state statute, but comply and put our teeth in with regards to the zoning. And also, I wrote down what you said about the signs and stuff. I mean, once we have regulations that work, that you guys approve, it will help us then deal with the folks that aren't going to deal. The guy with the truck that's got seafood in the back still has to follow our rules. He has to have a license from DPBR. He has, you know, so it gives us an ability to have rules, and that's why Ron and I talked about putting the houses of worship in this, you know, same thing with their acreage and everything else. Instead of this treating them differently, just put them in. If they meet the requirements and they've got the acreage, then they can have up to 1 food truck or up to 2. But they still have to meet all the rules. So then we're not, well, you know, I'm a house of worship, I get to do X, or this one gets to do this one. So, you know, we're trying to standardize it all and basically use our zoning and safety and the fire questions that we put in to basically make it possible and safer. And that way we can then, you know, because everything we're writing now, we're not writing unless we can enforce it. So, you know, we used to do ordinances that we couldn't enforce, and we have plenty of them already. So we're not doing that anymore. So all of these are viewed through, you know, that perspective. Can we enforce it, and will that allow us to deal with other people that are acting out or not following the rules while still obeying the state? And that's what we're trying to do here. So there's a number of pieces, but I think that once we get this one done and to you, that will clear up a lot of the problems we've had out there, and we won't be running against what the state has regulated.
Okay, well, and that's why I asked a question about the sign ordinance, because I know that was an act of Congress to get done. I mean, you guys really worked extremely hard on that. And believe even in the sign ordinance, they're not supposed to have the feather flags out there.
No.
But yet they are. They're up and down the
Yes.
boulevard and they're out there, you know, so then we're going to hear, hey, you're not enforcing it here, can you enforce it there? Or are we going to actually start enforcing?
Yes, because the whole idea is once we have all the pieces put together, then we have legislation we can enforce. We haven't had that, and you've had that kind of the houses of worship kind of exception, and then we had other issues, and this throws everything in and says, you may have this if you have this, if you have your license from the state, if you've met the requirements of the fire department, if you have all of these things, if you have the permission of the property you're on, if you have, you know, and so all of those things then become a check off that if you don't have it, we can enforce. We'll bulk up the sign. I'll go back, I haven't looked at that prohibition. But anyway, and I think that we have something we can enforce. And our problems have always been in the past where we don't know what we have, or we're not sure, or the pieces don't all fit together. And then it becomes who's going to enforce it? What's going to happen? What are we going to do? And so those are the kinds of questions we're trying to answer and deal with very plain talk legislation that we can enforce.
So if somebody's going to have an event, I'm just trying to get it in my head, which I'm pretty sure I have, and I think that is the best avenue, and we want to have a food truck. Let's say there's, you know, somebody's having a grand opening and they want to have a food truck out there, right? They would then, the food truck would need to get permission of whoever the property owner is and have it notarized, and then they bring it to the city, and is like filling an application, or is it done over here in like building services or P&Z?
Ron would have to tell you.
Okay, so, and then once it's approved, and what's like, is it like the same day turnaround? Can they say, hey, I'm going to be there every blah, blah, blah? Or does it have a requirement on, that's just for like these certain dates? I mean.
The scenario you described sounds like a special event, you know, like a grand opening. So that would be, this site plan review would be part of a special events permit that would limit the amount of time. The way the ordinance is proposed now, they could come in and find a site and be there for just those hours between 8 and 10 p.m. So they could be, in theory, there every day. And, you know, there was some discussion we had about that. Well, should they be there every day? That was a question that we talked about as well. But decided, well, okay, well, if it's okay, we'll let them be there every day within the hours of operation. And speaking of, just to elaborate on what Marcia said about enforcement, when we're doing these codes, you know, where it's applicable, we're going to be putting in a special enforcement section. In this particular case, the enforcement is code compliance will basically ask the vendor, if they don't meet the criteria, to move on. If they don't, then there's a fine starting at $500 that will run with the underlying landowner. So it'll be incumbent upon the landowner that they will bear a lot of the burden of this potentially, and not necessarily the vendor themselves, just to make that clear.
Okay, Commissioner McCool.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, I have questions for you, and perhaps I see that the chiefs are here this evening to ask. First thing, do we have a database or any sort of list or database of license or of food trucks in the area? Do we require or have a database to know? So with that being said, how is it that we track and trace? If we have a foodborne illness event, and we have multiple trucks on site, how do we trace back if we do not know the responsible parties?
Okay, if
Do we now? We do not now. I want to clarify.
No. one of the things they're going to have to come into the city, they're going to have to comply with our rules. Now, that doesn't mean they have to get a BTR, but they will have to present their DBPR and meet all of our criteria before they can operate in the city. So, and we'll then they have to have a site plan, we have to have their authorization from the landowner, and we're putting, as Ron said, we're putting the responsibility on the landowner. We're not going to go around chasing the trucks, wherever they go. And so, so responsibility is going to be on that landowner. And then, did you want to say something, John? Oh, I thought you wanted to say something. Oh, okay. And so we will then have a database of the ones who have come through the city to meet all our criteria. Now, if we have somebody calls and says, they're in the right of way, they're over here, the first thing we'll do is find out, do we have them on the list? Then if they are not on our list, they will be asked to leave the city. Okay?
I asked that to say this. At this juncture, it's like first of all, I love food trucks. I'm a self-proclaimed food truck junkie also. I do. I love them. I am an entrepreneur, and I celebrate the entrepreneurial spirit, period. In lack of, economic climate where you can reach the pinnacle of earning a wage, entrepreneurship allows you free enterprise capitalism. I'm all for it. But my thing is that now we have a fire department, life and safety issues. I'm going to assume, I'm sure somebody will set me straight, they don't know which food trucks are operating where right now, so that if there's an event, they can go find them. Is that correct? Does the fire...
You mean after we pass the ordinance, or right now where we don't have it?
Right now.
Okay.
There's no way to know who's
If I can answer that question.
Sure.
A significant number of food trucks, we know who they are. We know that the church on Providence across from the Winn-Dixie Plaza, there will be a purple food truck there tonight. The problem we have with that particular truck is it parked in the grass, which is not appropriate. And as you see in the ordinance, we require them to be on a paved surface. We know that I don't want to give advertisement, but out on Howland, there is a particular vendor that sells a special type of sandwich. It is in a business. The concern that I have is that business has a required number of parking spaces. If this truck interfering with the required number of parking spaces to where it could create a traffic problem elsewhere. So part of the site plan review we will do is, are they taking up required parking? If not, we designate the area where they are to work. The signage, we're covering with the sign code. But the basic answer to your question is, majority of these trucks, we know who they are and generally where they go. And so, that is helpful to an extent. But a number of them, we have problems, and, the code will help address some of those concerns. The other thing that we have done recently is, we have had a lot of frustration expressed about, locking down on the requirements. So there is a provision in the code for special event permit. It is issued through the Parks and Rec Director. He has issued several of them in recent months. He coordinates with the planning department, he coordinates with the fire department before he issues those permits. One of the hiccups we have is when they have these multiple food trucks events, is taking up the entire parking lot, and people don't have anywhere to park, and it creates a traffic problem on a major roadway. So that's part of that review now. But we recognize, as you said, the entrepreneurial spirit, but we also don't want that to infringe on the rights of others. And so we're trying to find a balance between a code modification that allows them to be there without adversely impacting the community in other ways.
Okay, so I want to know second about food handling safety practices / requirements. Ron, what are those?
Well, I can't talk.
Now, what are those right now?
We can't regulate.
Okay, that's all I needed to hear on
Yeah.
that, because my point is that the removing barriers to regulatory reform, this whole bill was written, okay? The bill was written, the Occupational Freedom and Opportunity Act.
Yes.
It was written and it pertains to businesses that already have licensing requirements in place. They're
Yes.
trying to remove duplicity, not being all willy-nilly. So my thing is that there are landscaping, AC, architect, cosmetology, interior design, who are already regulated by boards, by safety stops,
Except
and we do
food
not
trucks.
have that.
And then in the middle of an 86-page bill, they stick food trucks in there.
Exactly. So that is my concern right now. Foodborne illness, food handling. Listen, I've been in the hospitality business. We all had to have licenses for food handling, food manager. You know what I'm saying?
They're carrying that DPBR permit that also has a Department of Health involved, and we are not allowed to get any, we can't put any kind of licensing fee or anything on them. So obviously there were some folks in the legislature that had that were as interested in food trucks as you are, but maybe for a different reason.
Well, my problem is, again, I'm all for entrepreneurial, but I'm also about life and safety here. And there is prior training and licensing required for other occupations that this bill pertains to, and I agree with you. I just want to make sure that from a fire department standpoint, we're taken care of and we're covered on extinguishers, suppression, the tank inspection requirements, knowledge of handling those, and carbon dioxide emissions inspections from generators and the such. Are we covered on that from a life and safety standpoint right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, if they get the inspections, yes.
And you know something, in listening to you talk, I think when we do the site plan, we should also ask them what kind of food they are going to be selling. There's nothing in there that prevents us from doing that. So if we did have some kind of problem that a number of people got sick and we knew what they were selling, then we could, through our own records, track who maybe was selling it.
Okay.
And I'm good with that. My two main things here is for us to remember when doing this, and I know that you guys are way smarter than me, but to remember, and for our public to remember, that this is, we're not trying here to regulate, you know, these are placing emphasis on sanitation and safety, okay, and not to be used as a barrier of censorship or entrepreneurship, but to protect public safety, and that's all I'm asking here. They should be able to sell. We need them here. They're fantastic, but I just want to make sure that those are covered in what we're doing.
Okay, Commissioner Avila Vasquez?
Thank you, Mayor. So I know that in previous events that I used to be involved with, and it was special events, we had to have a fire inspection for every vendor who was going to sell food that was being cooked or warmed up on site, right? Is that also going to be being
ma'am.
done?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, otherwise the vendors couldn't sell anything. The other thing is, so you're having a fire inspector going on site?
Yeah, the intent is eventually all these food trucks would be licensed and inspected and display that certificate that they do comply with the fire code requirements. Then part of the site plan, all the separation distances will be ferreted out as well.
Okay, so tied to that, if we have a food truck that's going to constantly be in the same spot for numerous time of day of the week or months, how often will they be required to have an inspection done?
Right now, I believe when we talk to the fire department, and maybe they'll throw something at the back of my head or something, but I think it was once a year.
6 months.
6 months, I like that
Months.
better.
Okay, well.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's 6 months. I like that. My next question is, who is liable for their liability insurance? Does each truck have to have their own, or is that part of the business that are allowing them to be on their property?
That's the DPPR license that they carry, and we're not allowed to require anything more, but they're going to have to make an arrangement with a private property owner. And if I was that private property owner, I would want to see some insurance, but we're not in that. We're out of it. So it's between the truck and the private property owner where they're going to be located.
Okay, so I'm going to throw a question at
Okay.
you that came to me by one of the food truck owners. He felt he was being harassed because of where he was stationed, because of the way he was set up, because of what he had on the property. I could not answer him because I personally felt that the code enforcement should have gone to the property owner because they gave him permission to be there. But then I passed it on to Mr. Peters to take it over because I honestly was.
I mean, we're requiring under this ordinance, this draft, that the property owner who the food truck is making the arrangement with, they have to approve where he is, and he's going to have to meet those site requirements that we have. We don't have any requirements, nor do I think the state has, as to what they're cooking or selling. I mean, that would not be something we would have anything to do with. So, and I don't know what kind of, I mean, if we put the ordinance in place and we've got a food truck that meets all the requirements in the ordinance, and they legally have the right to be there unless the private property owner would revoke their ability to be there, or if they violate something.
Okay, so when we say violate something, what exactly? Because they're on private property, right?
Yes,
they're on city property.
Sure, but they still, they're serving past the hours. They're, creating some kind of noise that's bothering everybody. I mean, I don't know, but they are still responsible for meeting our requirements where we have hours, and also they can't create a public nuisance with music, and they still would be bound by any business that would be operating in the city, even though they're on somebody's private property. That's what I mean.
Okay.
Just for some clarification on that, the way the code is drafted, they've got that window between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m., but they cannot store their stuff there 24/7. They have to leave the premises and then come and set up again for the next day.
And that would be their responsibility. Code enforcement will be going after the food truck, not the owner of the property.
The enforcement, the first approach for enforcement is going to be, they don't comply, they're going to be asked to leave and, pack up and leave. If they don't, then the recourse is to go with the owner.
Okay, because the incident that I'm referring to was going back and forth. You should go to the owner, not me. I have permission from them to be here, and so forth.
Yeah, and that we're trying to ensure that enforcement is consistent and uniform.
Okay,
Obviously, all the city wants is compliance.
Right.
And compliance is obviously, if they don't comply, they shouldn't be there, then just pick up and leave. That to me seems the most obvious approach to managing a non-compliant situation is, okay, well, now it's in compliance because it's no longer there. We're going to find, a few individuals that may be, a little bit difficult to deal with, and they're going to say, well, no, we're not leaving because of ABC. And then, well, we're going to go ahead and that's when we take it up with the landowner. And that's going to take more time because it's going to involve, interfacing with somebody that may be absentee or we just don't know. And that's, like I said, that's just going to be kind of, not as immediate as, hey, look, you got to leave.
Okay, and my last question is, when they bring their license, their permits, and every certificate that is required, there is a way for us to verify that they
Yes.
are legit?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Commissioner Ramos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For me, it's just a question about when we talk about special events, I get it. 5 acres or less, just one food truck, correct? Anything over 5 acres, only two trucks. So if I have an event, a special event, and I'm less than 5 acres, I could only,
Maybe I'm wrong, Ron, but it's been a long day for me. So that's like on a daily basis. Like say you're a shopping center and you're over the 5,000, then you can have 2, okay? Special events is separate. So we'll still, like we're talking about having food truck nights here at City Hall or whatever, that will go through a special event. Or, the councilwoman was talking about, those kinds of special events where they have vendors. We're not.
The whole thing about the 5 acre or less or 5 acres or more, it pertains to those food trucks who are constantly out there. And we know there's some out there that do their business Thursday to Saturday, for example.
Yes.
So in that case, that area, wherever they're at, if it's 5 acre or less, only they are allowed to be there. Special events, it's a totally different story.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
And just for further clarification, on the special events, one of the things we're looking at is to avoid a loophole. We're looking to limit the number of special events you can have on a property per year. And something like 1 per month or something like that, so that we don't have people constantly using special events permit as a way around the code.
Because that was going to be a follow-up. Are we going to limit the special events and a pertaining property? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, could you remove your name? We're having technical issues. Thank you. Commissioner Sosa.
Okay. Quick questions.
Yes, sir.
Professional site plans. What is the average cost of a professional site plan?
Probably anywhere from $500 to $5,000, depending on the size of the site.
So we're going to ask all the food trucks to get a professional site plan.
Yeah,
and that's going to run them between $500, $5,000.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when we calculate acreage, my concern with acreage is I could have a 10-acre parcel and only 1 acre of it has parking. Or I could have a 5-acre parcel and I have 4 acres of parking. How are we going to determine, should it be based more on parking as opposed to size?
You make a good point. I think we should probably relook at that based on the developed character versus, the parcel size. If it's undeveloped, that area should not be considered to be eligible.
Yeah, I mean, that was just one of my concerns. And then I keep hearing safety. How many issues have we had in 2020 and year-to-date 2021 with food trucks? Have we had anybody have any issues where we've responded with emergency services or anything?
I don't know. Not to my knowledge, but I do not know.
Okay. And when we go for the landowner, you have, say you have a food truck, non-compliant if this ordinance passes, they are non-compliant, and they say, forget it, I'm not going to move, and they are there for the rest of the night. How do you go after the landowner if he did not give permission for them to be there?
It'd be incumbent upon them to enforce their property rights at that juncture.
Okay, so you're going to go after a landowner who basically did not give permission for this food truck to be there?
Yes. And that is something that they have the ability to take up with a special magistrate and have that adjudicated through that process.
I don't even think it should go there. I mean, that's my personal opinion. We shouldn't hold landowners responsible. I mean, otherwise they're going to end up putting 24-hour security at their properties. So.
Ron?
Yes.
I mean, you know, when I wrote that part, or I don't remember anymore if you wrote it or I wrote it, but anyway, we were looking at enforcement where we had a food truck that had gone through our checklist and had been in compliance, which would have required owner authorization. Okay, so in your scenario, and then you say, well, the owner didn't approve, well, that's different. We wouldn't go after the owner in that situation. What we would do, though, is ask them to leave, and then if they don't want, because we're also working on towing and a number of other things, then if it was up to me, I'd tow them, because one of the things I would ask for, if you were that food truck, I would ask for them to produce the authorization from the owner. And if they don't have it in their truck, then they should be towed, And so I guess some of these, you can only write to a certain point, and then you have to, you can't just have a solution for everything that could happen, and then you just have to deal with what happens. And so if that would be a food truck that didn't meet any of our criteria then.
So at that point,
Yeah.
you shouldn't hold the landowner responsible. I think
that's
that needs
not.
to be in there. That's a big issue.
But if you have a situation where you have a food truck that went through all of our criteria, which means having an authorized agreement, like the owner has authorized it, then yes, that's what I meant. Then we would go after the owner. We can't just, at some point, if folks want to rent their property out, they have responsibility too. And so just like they need to get insurance from that food truck to protect them if they poison 20 people, then, that shouldn't be our responsibility. By the same token, if they're not authorized to be there, that's not the owner's fault, but we still have to deal with that truck. So
That's a good point.
Well, I'll be honest, I see a lot of food trucks leaving Deltona because me as a personal landowner, I would not put my business at risk like that. And I see a lot of food trucks leaving with the current policy you guys are talking about. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner McCool, if you don't mind, I just want to address a couple things since everyone has spoken. So let's just clarify a couple things. First of all, Article 6, street vendors. Right now, what we have for the city of Deltona, prohibited acts. It shall be unlawful for any street vendor to sell goods, merchandise, or services from any public property, public right-of-way, unoccupied private property, or undeveloped private property within the city limits. Exceptions. Lists the thing of that. Exception, food sales on house of worship property. Under application by a house of worship, the city manager or his designee may grant a permit for the sale of food, which we know is not valid now, and a payment of $20 fee. Like to know, just out of curiosity, over the years before the state preempted us, how many of those we did. Such permit shall allow the sale of food by no more than one vendor at a time during daylight hours only on house of worship property. All equipment and materials of any kind used by vendor must be taken down before sundown each day and removed from house of worship property. This provision shall not eliminate any requirement for health, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So that's what we have in place, which we're not enforcing. So consequently, you have an explosion of itinerant merchants, and you have had for years. So my question is, you're saying if you have a piece of property, let's take the Winn-Dixie Plaza, and listen, I sent you guys 4 or 5 years ago the City of Ormond Beach's itinerant merchant application complete with site plan and everything else that they don't have to cough up $500 for. It's a simple site plan you have to provide. And it's a notarized copy from the owner of the property if the applicant is not the owner. Simple. Okay? Parking. You got to show where the parking is. You got to show where you're going to throw your garbage away. Pretty simple. Ingress, egress. It's not that difficult. I sent it to every city manager we've had in the last however many years for this. So under your plan, you have your acreage, whatever you said, less than 5 acres, 1 truck.
Yes, ma'am.
So Are we keeping a database? Because if John's Fish brings in a site plan and says, I'm going to be parking here, and then Joe's Burgers decides to show up there, who do we pick that stays there if they both got permission from the owner?
We would need to establish a database to
But I'm
implement
just
this.
saying, if the plaza at Winn-Dixie, I don't know how many acres that is, says Joe's Burgers and John's Fish both signed up, and you're allowed to have one, who makes that decision?
That would be.
The owner of the
yes.
property.
Yes.
But what if
yeah.
the owner of the property gave, or the property manager gave it? It's just a question. I don't expect an answer tonight.
Well, but I mean, to me, it's the property owner, and if we had a situation that he basically picked two when he was only allowed to pick one, then we'd have to go to the property owner and tell him to pick one. I mean.
Okay, it's just a question, because that's going to be part of what comes in. And also, when we already don't allow a lot of this, we don't allow signs in the right of way, we don't allow sign spinning and all that kind of stuff and these distractions, yet we have them consistently. And we have food trucks in almost every plaza. We have them in the middle of a dollar store. We have them, my personal favorite, the gas station at Normandy and Providence, with half the truck hanging in the drive lane where people come in off of Providence Boulevard. And they've got, what do you call that, gas thing sitting in the back, and is it 10 feet from the pump? Not sure, but hey, I don't want to see that go up in smoke. So, I mean, whatever we decide to do, like you said, it has to be enforceable. Number one, it has to be simple. I don't want to see a food truck vendor have to spend $5,000 on a site plan. I don't think they have to. What was the answer to Commissioner Sosa's question?
Ron said anywhere from 500 to 5,000, and I would assume 5,000 is a more developed
Madam Mayor,
Right.
Yes.
if I can jump in here. While I agree with Ron on a new site plan, 500 to 5,000 probably accurate. What we probably need to do is address in our code when we can use an existing site plan as opposed to requiring a brand new one. For instance, if you have a CVS drugstore and they got a site plan 8 years ago and they hadn't changed one iota, I believe we could use that older site plan, review the requirements. If they were required to have 25 parking spaces and they have 27, that means they have 2 parking spaces they can utilize for the food truck. If they can't fit in there, they can't go there. So, the cost of the site plan can be dramatically reduced with a modification of the code with regard to this section. So that first. Second thing is, going back to what the city attorney said, when it comes to code compliance, simplicity is best. Where we get in trouble is when we complicate things. And what we're trying to do with the code, and we have had a lot of discussions about this, who ultimately is responsible for the property? The property owner. And for simplicity's sake, it is better for us to deal with the property owner. Just like we have all these rental properties that are causing us a great deal of grief, the fastest way to compliance is to go after the landlord. Works every time. And so that's part of the change that we're making. This is relatively new for us, but the more we can simplify things, the more efficient we can be. And so simplifying things with regard to the site plan, because quite honestly, most of these site plans are going to show that there's not excess parking. So they're going to have to find somewhere else, either build a pad somewhere on the site or something to put the truck on that doesn't affect the required parking. So dealing with the property owners is the most efficient way to do code compliance. That's what we're trying to do here. But we're also trying to do something much more important. And, I marvel because not a single one of y'all mentioned it. And that is what we're trying to do is put a carrot out there. Instead of making our lives miserable, chasing you all over the city in your truck, we're going to provide you a place to do it. You know that every Wednesday and Saturday you can come to City Hall and you can be here. City Hall is nowhere near a brick and mortar restaurant. You're not going to be in direct competition with a restaurant nearby. So for 2 nights a week, you can be here. Prior to COVID, it was well known that on Thursday night you could go to the Gateway Center in DeBerry, food trucks were there. Orange City had a location 1 night a week. And, you know, if we had 2 nights a week, between the 3 cities, we could have 4 nights covered. And, you know, we don't have to have the time limit necessarily. After 5 o'clock, the parking lot is empty for the most part. We have a plaza out here, let me point the right way, that we could put picnic tables up. So we have some opportunities to do some very positive things with regard to the food truck. You know, some of our parks, when we have a tournament, you know, we can work with the food truck vendors to allow 2 or 3 of them to be at that park to provide food for an all-day event. You know, we're trying to come up with some alternatives so that we don't need this ordinance. But we need the ordinance in place so that we have a way of enforcing it. And the property owner is ultimately the one that's responsible. I'm most concerned about safety. When I see a food truck parked on the grass, when I see a food truck that's very close to gas pumps, when I see a food truck that is in the right-of-way blocking sight distance at an intersection, those are safety issues. Those things are the things that get my hair up. So, you know, we're trying to let the property owners know that we're going to hold them accountable. You know, if you got a food truck that's out in your parking lot, you better have permission slip. Because, you know, right now we don't have the ability to go on private property and tow somebody. So the only choice we have is to go to the property owner. Now, you know, this is supposed to be occupied businesses, so it would stand to reason that if my favorite sandwich truck is up there on Howland, that I can walk into the store and say, did you give that guy permission to be out there? Because he's blocking 6 of your parking spaces and you're out of compliance with your parking requirement. You need to get him out of here. It probably will get taken care of. So, you know, that's what we're trying to accomplish here. And the ordinance, you know, part of what we were hoping for tonight was just a general discussion, which is basically what we've had. Because, you know, what we want to do is tweak the ordinance to simplify it for the staff that results in compliance. That's what we're trying to do with code enforcement throughout the Code of Ordinances. We're trying to find ways to simplify the process, hold property owners accountable so that we get compliance, because that's usually the quickest way to it, is holding the property owner in compliance.
Mr. Peters, if I can stop you for just a minute, we're running over time. Commissioners, are we good for 15 minutes to be till quarter of 8? We good with that, everyone? I know. You could, I know, I'm getting the eye. Okay, Commissioner McCool, Vice Mayor Bradford, and then we'll go to public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to dwell for one moment because I have the same concern that Commissioner Souza had regarding a site plan, because I do special events for a business that I have over in Holly Hill. Holly Hill is really, really helpful in their business plan and encouraging businesses to do that. My site plan for my special events require me to do an overhead shot, right? They require me to have my businesses that are around me. I have permission from those for parking. They require to know where the Holly Hill PD is going to be, traffic flow, that kind of thing. I prepare that myself, and I think it's a bit restrictive to ask that a business owner of course, I pay $150 for a special permit fee when I do that also. So I would just like that known. It's restrictive, and it's somebody counting dollars on a food truck. That's hard work anyway. So I'm with Commissioner Souza on that concern. Second is, I really want us to one of the biggest things too is to remember how to get our entrepreneurs to yes. I know that the conversation can sometimes seem a bit restrictive and regulatory, and I don't think that that's the goal of this commissioner. Mine is for life and safety. So I just want us to keep that in mind also, how we help our residents and our entrepreneurs get to yes. I know that we don't want them to not be business, that we want it just to be regulated so that we protect the majority of our constituency with things like life and safety issues, like everyone's talked about, having tanks close to to gas pumps and stuff like that, and also food safety. I'm just a freak about food safety, germs, you take a risk when you eat off of a food truck anyways. Every food truck that I've ever dealt with here in Deltona, I've peeked in and they're pretty sanitary, So I'm not picking on who we have, I'm picking on who might not have that in mind when operating maybe an older food truck or not understanding, foodborne illness and temperatures and things like that, because they don't have a roving health inspector, I don't think, come and check food temperatures at will when things are held. I know there's limited space. So I just want to keep those constraints in mind. That's all I wanted to say is that, I want us to help them get to yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Easy question. As a business owner, we have a food truck there, not allowed. City comes, they refuse to leave. The business owner is allowed to trespass them, correct? Yes. So, and a lot of times the sheriff's office has where these individuals can file I believe it's called a unconditional trespass or something of that sort, where the owner doesn't have to be present to have somebody trespass. They just basically have to have the signs posted, and then if the sheriff rolls up, they can actually have them removed.
Trespass is one of the areas we're working on, and the city manager is working on an agreement with the sheriff, and there's a provision in there so that the city and the sheriff will have a meeting of the minds as to trespass, which we haven't really had before. So we may or may not need our own trespass ordinance, because we've never had one that fulfills, that basically takes trespass into a criminal code situation if we need the sheriff to enforce. So that's on our radar also.
Okay, public comment?
Thank you.
Albert
Thank you,
Bryan,
Ron.
please.
Albert Bryan, Deltona. Lot to take in tonight. I'm going to say this just because I've got 5 or 6 messages already tonight about this. When the fire department did their, the fire department union, excuse me, with all due respect, Captain, when they did their collective bargaining agreement, we were told that here it is. You don't get a say in it. This is the way it is. Like they had some God-given authority. Now, I'm going to say this, and y'all can do whatever you want with it as far as I'm concerned, because I know y'all always do. It doesn't matter what anybody says out here. But, they were so self-righteous with their agreement that you ought to shove their agreement right down their throat. I think they only deserve 3%, and that's it. Because as far as I'm concerned, when somebody cops that kind of attitude with me, normally they get the middle finger and they get a good swift kick in the tail. Now, as far as all this food truck talk we're having here, it's funny. There's a food truck every day at the dollar store at Howland, Catalina. 4 times. I drive Howland regularly Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. 4 times I've seen those flags, those 15-foot little wavy flags, fall across Howland. And yet, no other businesses that I know of are allowed to have temporary signs in Deltona. And yet, they're getting away with almost murder.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, did you want to come up and speak? Yes, please. Sure. I know the feeling. Need a jump start.
Yeah. I want to introduce myself. I'm Lisa Hager. I'm sorry. My name is Lisa Hager, and I'm from the Deltona United Church of Christ. And yes, we've had a lot of food trucks come there. We've had events. Up and for a year and a half, I am the event coordinator, and for a year and a half, I have put these events on, and nobody ever told me, and we've called, nobody ever told me we needed permits. Then one Friday, I had food trucks there, first Friday of every month. Then I had the code enforcement come to me and tell me, we can't do it no more. We had to have permits. I don't have a problem of paying, and it's not $20, it's $50 for the church to get permit. I just had one. I don't have the problem if it's a money issue. My problem is when I go to these food trucks and I tell them, okay, you guys, you got to sign this paper saying your compliance in this rule. You got to make sure your insurance is up to date, which I have a copy of their insurance. I have a copy of their license for the church's safety. Everybody knows that they have to comply, because if they don't, I'm yelling at them. That's just the way it is. It's really hard for the church to put on events. I don't want it to where our church is doing it to...
Thank you, ma'am.
Sorry, it's 2 minutes for public comment. Is there a way that you can leave your contact information with the clerk's office, that someone can get in touch with you and talk to you about what's required and what's not? Is that all right, Mr. Peters? Because I think that's going to be, she needs to find out where we are in that.
Yes, because there's a lot of questions.
We would be happy to talk.
Okay, go ahead and leave your contact information with Liz over there, and then someone will get in contact with you, and then you can work that out, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And just before we adjourn, ladies and gentlemen, this discussion is not to, like Commissioner McCool said, ban businesses or make it difficult. It is about getting some control over where there is none right now. And this lady is the prime example of why we need something solidified so that they understand what the parameters are. So, Mr. Peters, are you good with tonight's discussion? Do you need anything else from this commission before we adjourn?
I think we have gotten good direction. However, I would like to ask just to confirm that the commission is okay with using City Hall for a food truck bazaar or something like that a couple nights a week.
If we're good with liability insurance, and if we are good with all of that, that nothing falls back on the city, then I'm fine with it. Everyone? Okay? All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, commissioners. Till next week, we are adjourned.